How's it going, creeps? Welcome to episode 11 of Cinema Creep, a Black and Mass Films podcast where we dissect all things vile, disgusting, and downright terrifying in the world of horror cinema. I'm Justin James.
And I'm Andrew Henderson.
And, not only are we a couple of guys that love horror films, we are also horror filmmakers ourselves. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk to you guys about in this episode. So we're not really going to talk about things we've watched this week. We're going to just dive straight into, what is Black Mass Films? How did it start? The production that we had going pre-pandemic and where we plan on going with that now. And, then we've got a couple of questions planned out for each other as director and cinematographer, and it's going to be a pretty simple, straightforward episode to give you guys a little bit of insight on some things to look forward to as far as our original work. So
you know what, Justin, I think this would be a super helpful podcast if we have any other filmmakers that listen to this, or just anybody that's interested in the art of filmmaking that doesn't know exactly what goes into it, or somebody that's looking to get into it. I think this would be super helpful. So if you're one of those people out there, definitely stay for the full hour or however long we run this, because there's going to be a lot of interesting information in there and a lot of stuff you can learn so you don't make the same mistakes that we make.
Yeah, especially if you're someone who is basically doing everything yourself. Because at the stage that this current, production studio that Andrew and I have together, like we basically fund everything ourselves. And sometimes Andrew and I have to wear more than one hat on set. And, that's how a lot of independent filmmakers now are today. Period. So if you're trying to get into that world, hopefully we can help you guys out, especially if you're wanting to be a horror filmmaker. So real quick, of course, we got our sponsor, Everblack Coffee. Go to everblackcoffee.com, grab a bag for yourself. You won't regret it. It's high quality, ethically sourced coffee with a macabre twist, and it's what we drink here on Cinema Creep. So quick little bit of horror news. Of course, over the last couple episodes, we've been kind of giving you guys little updates on Scream 5. Neve Campbell has signed on, and she's, coming back to her role as Sidney Prescott. So pretty stoked on that.
Which is major, because I was kind of worried about that. Like, I didn't know whether they were going to have her character killed off or just write her off, because reportedly she did say at one point in time that she wasn't interested in being in any Scream if Wes Craven, wasn't directing it, right? And obviously, since he has passed, I was kind of concerned whether or not she was going to actually be in this, because I actually love her character, in the franchise, as well as most of them, like even Dewey, even David Arquette's character,
right.
It's just, it would be really weird to see all those other characters come back and then her not be there.
Well, I agree, but the one thing that has me kind of nervous about it, I didn't really think this at first, but yeah, we were talking about this the other day, Katie and I, and she brought it. She's like a bigger Scream fan than I am. And she was talking about how, maybe the whole reason that she finally agreed to do it is they are going to kill her off. Because it's kind of like, maybe they've hassled her, and it's like she feels like this franchise has gone on too long. I don't want to talk about this too much because this isn't, a Scream episode, but it's kind of like maybe they were like, well, this is going to be the last one. We're going to kill your character off. Here's a nice big paycheck. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So it's just a thought.
I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I will be, I don't know. I'll be surprised if it does happen.
I will too, but I can still kind of see that happening. It's kind of like, that's almost something though that you would probably have expected from like Jamie Lee Curtis as far as Halloween goes, because it's kind of like, she's done, but I guess they finally, whenever Halloween 2018 came along, they finally had a good enough script and a story that she was like, okay, I can get on board with this. Same for John Carpenter.
Yeah.
But so that's enough about that. Let's talk about us. Andrew.
Yeah, for once, let's talk about us, right?
Yeah.
So guys, let me give you a little backstory. It's not a very long one. So I've known Justin for probably going on, I don't know, probably 10 years, maybe something close to that. We started out as acquaintances. We have a mutual friend that sort of introduced us, and I've been doing video work for a decade or so now, maybe a little longer, going on like 12 years. And I started out doing what everybody does, with a photography camera when the DSLR revolution happened. If you're one of those people, you know what I'm talking about. I'll write 5D Mark I and Canon T2i. I realized real quickly that, hey, I could make movies with this, and it was a big explosion on YouTube of people doing short films. So I jumped headfirst into that world. And the way I met Justin was, throughout my life and throughout his life, we both were in bands, never together. And I had a general interest in music as well as he did. I'll let him touch on that in a minute. But his band was looking for a music video, and through our mutual friend, they found me, and then I started shooting them music videos and promotional photos for their band. That's how I met Justin. And you got any take on that story?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, as far as me getting into film, it's kind of the same story. Everybody that gets into this industry has the same, I got a camera and then I just started filming things. And, I'm sure you can attest to this as well, because it goes back even further for me than when DSLRs were a thing. I remember, my mom used to have this little Panasonic, handheld video recorder that filmed on the little mini DVs, and you put them in the bigger VHS, and then you put that in the VHS player. And we used to just film ourselves skateboarding, band practice, doing stupid stuff like jackass style stunts. And then I just liked filming things, and then it turned into I liked writing horror films, and I would make these just awful little short films. And then I was in bands. So I happened to be in this. It was kind of like a cross between metalcore and pop punk bands. Because I've come up in just a pool of various different genres. So Chris, the drummer of that band, was friends with Andrew, and he was like, hey, this dude can take some pictures for us. So we went and had some promos taken. And then he came to my house and we shot, a pretty rad little music video. And, then we slowly over the next couple of years started hitting each other up with, film ideas. And then that turned into collaborating. And then, now we YouTube, we vlog together all the time. And over the last couple of years, it's turned into not just a friendship, but it's a friendship. Plus our vlogging isn't just we're not just using each other for, hey, you want to go vlog so I can have content? Because it's those things are part of our personality anyway. And that's just why we get along as friends, is because we both are into the same things. And then as far as business partners, I feel like we're on the same page. We have the same goals. We have the same drive to make things happen. And that's kind of leading up to the things that we're going to talk about. And that's pretty much how Black Mass Films eventually just came to be, is us having, the same vision, the same goals, and trying to make the same thing happen. So teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, for sure. So, basically what he said, but he's been doing his own thing, right, for a little while, making films, doing this and that, and me as well. I had a production company called Hard Luck Media for a long time, and I primarily shot music videos, shot weddings, did some commercials for some smaller businesses and stuff like that, and a lot of, graphic design things. It was just an all around, sort of like a marketing video production company. It
was like a multimedia kind of deal, right?
Right. And I did a couple films, but nothing too serious. And, so when I decided, hey, I want to start this next chapter of my life where I only double down on my passions, which is horror and horror films, I decided to holler at Justin from across town. And I said, hey, Justin, you like horror and I like horror. Let's start a horror production company. And he said, that's what's up. And I said, okay. And so one day I was cleaning my studio out. Verbatim. And one day I was cleaning my studio out and I came across a script that I wrote probably 8 years ago called Incisor. And it was finished. It was already printed out. It was already bound and everything. And I was like, oh shit, I totally forgot I even wrote this. Started thumbing through it and I was like, oh, this is pretty sick. You know, it's a creature feature. It's something you don't see a whole lot of these days. And, you know, I would really like to shoot this because it's pretty straightforward and it would be something nice to break up the norm of what you see out there, especially in our area. A lot of stuff you see is a lot of action stuff, right? Because when you're an indie filmmaker, action is normally what people lean to, because on a budget, that stuff is pretty easy to pull off, believe it or not. All you need is some prop pistols and some muzzle flashes and you're good.
Right. And I mean, a lot of independent filmmakers go to horror too because it's cheap, but it's when it comes to making like a student film or an indie horror film, everyone kind of goes to like the same thing, you know, like everybody's got a friend that's got like a barn and they're like, oh, well, this, you know, this guy's going to be chasing this girl through the woods. And it's like the same story every time. Or you just throw some people in a house and then you just come up with some inventive kills. And that's why when you were like, hey, I've got this script, you know, it's a creature feature. I've always loved creature features anyway. I was like, hey, no one is like doing this, at least like as far as short films. No independent filmmakers on YouTube, Vimeo, the internet, whatever, are making films about this particular thing. So I was like, hell yeah, we have to make this. Like,
I mean, legitimately this day and age, unless you're GDT, that's Guillermo del Toro, for you guys out there, there's nobody really doing creature features. I mean, now they're starting to do stuff like Invisible Man, and they're starting to, you know, bring back some of these old like Universal monsters and do stuff here and there. But like, you don't see it much. You see paranormal shit over and over and over and over again. And for somebody that's a skeptic, like, I know it's not a fun way to live your life, but I don't believe in paranormal anything. You know, paranormal movies are cool, but once I see one, it's kind of like, well, I've seen most of them, until somebody just turns that genre on its head and they do something completely new. You know, like when Paranormal Activity came out, I was like, holy shit, this is cool, because that was like completely new, right?
Yeah. And then they ran it into the ground with like a million films.
Well, yeah, it was a cash grab because they made a killing off of that film. But, you know, so it's just something like a creature feature this day and age gets me excited, because it takes me back, Justin, to when I was a child in the early horror films I watched. And I know you're a big Godzilla fan, right?
Yeah.
So it was always like Godzilla versus this or Godzilla versus that as a child, you know? And, you know, of course I came up in the time of, you know, the Monsters and the Addams Family on TV. I watched all of that shit with my mom, because my mom was really into it. And, you know, that got me into other things, right? So I started watching like Frankenstein and, you know, like Phantom of the Opera and Wolfman and stuff like that, you know, because it was easily accessible as a kid, you know, because those things weren't overly gory, they weren't overly violent, so you could easily get your hands on those. You could go to the library and check those out as a kid and nobody would bat an eye.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's sort of, you know, I've always had a love for monster movies, right? And, you know, so I wrote this film. It's called Incisor. The quick synopsis of it, guys, is after the unexpected death of her mother, Hannah, an introverted artist, forces herself to live a life of normalcy in a town that is anything but normal. So Incisor is due to come out 2021. That is next year. And we almost shot this entire film. We had, what would you say, probably a slated production of 10 days maybe, and we shot maybe 7 of those 10 days.
Yeah.
So we were like 3 days shy of production, and then COVID hit. And before COVID hit, guys, we knew all along that our main actress, Jackie Hoops, shout out Jackie, amazing actress, she was telling us, hey guys, I'm gonna be moving soon. She was taking her talents to Las Vegas, right? And we were like, okay, that sucks, because, you know, we think you're rad and we'd love to have you in future stuff. But, you know, that put us on a time constraint for the film. We knew it was coming and we were like, oh God, we got to hurry up and schedule everybody, get this shit shot. And since she's the main actress, she is literally in every single scene of the movie except for the first portion, which we were shooting at a later date that we knew we wouldn't need her for, right? Another section of the movie. And, what ended up happening was the COVID-19 thing came, right? This is November of last year, right? So it started
we
started making waves, and it started.
Remember because she went to Australia for Christmas.
Yeah, we had the break in November.
Yeah, so it's like
she went to Australia.
Yeah, so she was going to come back after Christmas. She went on like a month vacation, and we were going to pick back up in January. And I think we filmed like one day, and then the next thing you know, you turn on the news, and it's like this shit is spreading like
worldwide
fast.
Pandemic out of nowhere. Yeah,
so then it's like, okay, well, we're gonna like hold off on this for a little bit because, you know, as much as we want to finish this film, like the health and safety of the cast and crew and my family and your family,
it's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to just go on a little hiatus. And then, you know, she inevitably had to move across the country. And then we're like, okay, well, we're back to square one. What are we going to do?
Yeah. So now without a main actress, we were like, well, we can't really finish the movie because we needed her for the other 3 shoot dates. So with the pandemic going on, me and Justin have scrambled to figure out what it was we were going to do. And, you know, we've written, we've talked, we've location scouted, we've, you know, tried to scrape together a little bit bigger budget. And really the only thing that we can do for Incisor is we're just going to reshoot it all, right? That's literally all we can do, because at this point we're not going to ask somebody to get on a plane. Not ask her to get on a plane, especially when COVID hasn't gone away. It's not necessarily 100% safe to be anywhere. And then bring her here and then have to do all of that. We are just going to go ahead. We've talked to her. We've talked to the whole cast, and we're just going to reshoot the film. And it sucks to do that because we had some really gnarly shots, some really super, super creepy and amazing, you know, just scenes, right? That the cast delivered, right? But you know, at this point our hands are tied, so we're just going to reshoot the film and do it bigger and better. And I'm super stoked for it. You know, I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah. As far as bigger and better, so this is a short film. It's probably going to, by the time everything's filmed and, you know, it's edited and we get it the way we want it, it's probably going to be about 20, 25 minutes long.
Yeah.
So instead of hyping everyone up for a short film, like we've done for like the last over a year, we said, let's, you know, go back and do some rewrites to this, change a couple things that would make, you know, production easier, write a little bit more at the beginning. So it's got like an opening sequence, but then let's write 2 more short films. Andrew already had an idea going. I had an idea going and I shared it with him. So basically we are going to make an anthology film that is 3 short films about 25 minutes long that are interlaced, you know, with like a host, kind of very much like, you know, Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, Creep Show, that kind of thing.
Creep Show, yep.
Yeah. Because that's another thing. For me, Tales from the Crypt was probably like the thing that really catapulted me into horror. You know, growing up, I did, you know, get into Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and things like that. And so those were like my gateway drug. And then I was like, okay, well, there's an adult version of this. And that's, you know, Tales from the Crypt. And then that introduced me to all these other things. And then I would go to, you know, like Family Video or Flick Video or whatever and rent all of these horror films on VHS. So to me, the idea of making an anthology, not only is there a creature feature in this, you know, the anthology thing pays homage to, you know, our other like influences, especially because, you know, Body Bags is another anthology with John Carpenter. So So we're doing this on a bigger scale instead of just having a 20-minute film, you know, that we're going to throw on the internet. We're going to make an entire like feature length thing, and we do plan on having some kind of theatrical release for this, like, you know, a small like showing or whatever. But we're going all in.
Well, Yeah, no, we're going all in, guys. And, you're hearing it here first. I mean, we haven't really spread the news out there that it's going to be an anthology. A lot of people know about Incisor, but they don't know about the other two films. And
Literally at
those
all.
other two films we are going to keep under wraps for now until we start actually developing them out. But they're going to be equally as sick as Incisor. And, like you said, a theatrical release of some sort. We're going to be packaging it and putting it on video on demand. It is going to be a huge undertaking. And it is going to be a lot of fun for us to update you guys along the way. Especially if you guys watch us on YouTube or whatever, you'll see a lot of those behind the scenes type of things. But I'm super excited, right?
So, speaking of that, like I will plug these again at the end, but so if you guys want to keep up more with, like as production goes along or as we develop more, you can follow Black Mass Films on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow Cinema Creep on Twitter and Instagram. And we're constantly trying to, post things there to keep you guys involved. Because eventually as this comes out, I think it'd be cool to do some like, giveaways, like prop giveaways and stuff like that. Because I'm all about doing shit like that. I've always been all about that. So
I love a good movie prop.
Yeah.
But so that is Incisor in a nutshell and like what has been going on with it. So if you're somebody that knows us and you're kind of wondering, hey guys, what's up with Incisor? That's basically it. We haven't forgot about it. Hasn't gone on the back burner. It is literally something that me and Justin talk about daily, right? So we're gearing up for it right now. We are just looking for another main actress, somebody who lives up to the performance of Mrs. Hoops. And, other than that, once we find that perfect actress, we are going to start setting some production dates and start rolling on this because I'm ready and he's ready. And, we're going to put some awesome horror out into the world there. We have a second section of this, Justin, other than just, talking about Incisor. And there's a couple things that I think people will benefit from. And that is, I've got a series of questions I want to ask you, and I asked you to prepare some questions for me as well.
Yep.
And, first, without prompting you, before I get into the questions I have written for you, an overall question I have is, what do you think is the biggest thing that you learned so far, not only working for Black Mass Films, but on the production of Incisor? What is it, a piece of knowledge that maybe you picked up, or is it just, a new skill that you felt yourself level up on?
Well, one thing that one thing I learned, and I think we've done a much better job of this already, is preparedness. Because it's not that we were like, being amateur about it or anything. It's just, I feel like we were so excited to finally like be getting a film underway that even though ultimately what halted the production was the pandemic, I feel like if we were just a little more prepared, we would have gotten those 10 days wrapped before it even happened. But
right.
I feel like from that, there's just little nuances that, just in the planning and conversations that you and I have had moving forward that,
right.
we've said, okay, we don't need to do this again. We need to do it this way. So just like, it's little things that I can't necessarily even like touch on, because it's just like small, like you would have had to have been there, kind of learn from the experience. But
I've got one.
Go for it.
That goes along with what you said, right? So having a plan B is sort of what Justin's talking about with a lot of this, because a lot of it was we had an excellent plan A, but we failed to have a plan B. So we had a special effects guy that was supposed to come out. He was going to do some custom masks and some custom appliances for us. He canceled within like 72 hours of the first production day. So that left us scrambling to figure out what we were going to do for our creature, which we came up with something super gnarly, something rad. And it turned out to be really cool. So fuck that dude. But and then another thing was sound. Sound is something that plagues us. So if you're a boom operator, or anybody that wants to stand around and hold a boom mic, hit us up.
Yeah. Apply within.
Because listen, like, sound guys are like the bass players of the music world. You don't notice that they're there until they're not, and then you're like, holy shit, they're the backbone that holds everything together.
Right.
So like we had a sound guy, and then we didn't, and then we had friends kind of coming in to do sound, but none of them really gave a shit about doing it, so they kind of half-assed it. Would show up one day, wouldn't show up the next day, and then that would lead one of us that's, you know, directing or working the camera or like the AC, somebody, you know, that is supposed to be doing something else, you know, holding the boom pole. So that puts one of their jobs on one of us. So no plan B there. And then we also ran into an issue with a car, right? Like the prop. You want to talk about the car that we needed in the film and our issues there a little bit?
Yeah. So there's a mixture of things about the car. So a certain character in this film needs a very specific car, and we just so happened to know someone who had one. The problem is we were shooting the main portion, like principal photography was taking place in Charlotte. Andrew and I both live probably about an hour and a half away from Charlotte, and the car is relatively close to where we live. The car is also not in the greatest condition and probably wouldn't make it that hour and a half drive on interstate. So that was the first problem. Getting in touch with the owner of the car on certain days was another problem. It just, you know, it's like every day there was something. It's like the person is like, hey, yeah, we can do this, but I don't think the car is going to make it. Well, we don't have anything to tow the car to Charlotte with. Or it's like, okay, well, we'll figure something out. We'll get the car to Charlotte. We just need to get a hold of the owner. And then it was almost impossible to get a hold of him. So
yeah, so that's one thing, you guys, is one big thing that if you're a filmmaker, you know, if you're somebody that is thinking about taking up this profession or getting into the industry, scheduling is a huge thing, right? So not only is scheduling, but constant communication with everybody that's involved in the film, because at the end of the day, like, me and Justin bear the burden of everything that went wrong. Because we know that had we done our job to its fullest potential, whether it was communication, whether it was scheduling, whether it was having those plan Bs, then everything would have went the way it should have been. But like he said, we were so excited that we just started. We didn't do enough pre-production. We were kind of just jumping on it like, okay, well, this is already set in stone. This person said yes. They said they're locked and loaded and ready. And then when it came time to rely on those people were like water. They take the path of least resistance, Justin, right? So a lot of times when you're like, all right, are you still good for tomorrow? And they're like, yeah. And then when tomorrow comes, they realize they have to drive in an hour and a half to set. And then they just turn their phone off or whatever the case may be, you know, or they just, you know, say, hey, yeah, I'm going to make you all these fucking gnarly, custom costume pieces and all of this. And I'm like, awesome. I've got some payment for you. You know, let me know when you have them done. And then they just ghost you, right? So it's stuff like that, because people love the idea of being part of something, but they don't actually like putting in the work to be part of something. And you really have to vet your resources and vet these people and make sure that they have some sort of experience, even if it's just a tiny bit, to show that they're really about it. You know, and that's the biggest thing, is have that plan B and make sure you fully do your research.
Yep. So with that, before we go any further into, you know, interviewing each other, so to speak, we're going to take a quick sponsor break, and we'll be right back. How's it going, creeps? One quick mid-episode break to tell you a little more about our sponsor. Since 2016, Everblack Coffee Company has delivered exceptional single-origin coffee and high fives all over the world. They understand that a cup of coffee is so much more than something you drink. That's why they source their beans from farms that only use fair trade and organic growing practices. When you buy coffee from Everblack, you can be certain that you're getting the highest quality coffee available by ethical means only. It's time to start looking at coffee differently. Head over to everblackcoffee.com and grab a bag for yourself. It's deliciously dark. Now back to the show. Welcome back, creeps. So we are, going to dive more into some of these questions we have for each other. So I'm just going to, kick this right off, Andrew. As a cinematographer, who are some of your favorite, we'll say, who are your top 3 all-time favorite cinematographers? It can be any order within that 3. It doesn't have to be like, third to your favorite. Just as long as there's someone who, got you into wanting to be a cinematographer and influence your work in some way, or you just absolutely admire their work.
Wow. So only 3.
Yeah.
Let's
make it tough on you.
Let's start with the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Roger Deakins.
Old RD.
Yeah. So if you do any sort of camera work, like Roger Deakins is a genius. He's, the reason we have a lot of the Coen brothers movies looking so awesome, things like Fargo and No Country for Old Men, which is just a fantastic film. I think you even told me this is one of your favorite movies of all time.
Yep, it's in my top 5.
It is definitely up there for me. If you've never seen No Country for Old Men, it is freaking phenomenal. Definitely go check it out. It is not a horror film, and Roger Deakins,
But you just gave me an idea. We are going to do an episode one day of horror adjacent films, just so we can talk about No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
All right,
to my knowledge, Roger Deakins has never shot a horror movie. I think he started out as a documentarian and just moved into narrative filmmaking, but he more does like drama pieces or like suspense movies, right? Because he did Prisoners. Did you guys see Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal? Holy crap, that movie was amazing, right?
You could call any film that Roger Deakins DPs an art film because he just makes it such a fucking work of art. Just like,
yeah.
Like even look at like 1917, like that is a war movie, but it looks so fucking just beautiful.
Yeah, it looks amazing. So number 2, a man that I am a big fan of, Emmanuel Lubezki, Chivo. If you know anything about him, he's Mexican born, from, Mexico.
Imagine that.
And his early life, he I don't know much about his early life.
Hey, I didn't ask you who has your favorite backstory. But hey,
dude is sick though. So he did movies like like Gravity, right? And Birdman. Did you guys ever watch Birdman? Birdman was super, super awesome. They did all of those really long like one shots in those. And
dude, I fucking love one shots.
It was amazing. The Revenant, was amazing. So go check out his Instagram. It's just Chivo on the old IG, and the dude is massively talented, not just in cinematography but in photography in general. So Emmanuel Lubezki is number 2, and number 3. Let's see if we can pronounce it this time. Hoyt van Hoytema, right? He is amazing. He's a cinematographer that I've always known his movies, but I've never really actually paid attention to the cinematographer behind it. And, I'm really getting into this guy, right? Because as he's coming out and he's making bigger and bigger movies, he's starting to really have a style that I'm noticing. Of course, we've talked about it on here before. He did Let the Right One In, which was an absolutely amazing vampire movie. It is my number probably 2 favorite vampire movie of all time. He did stuff like Interstellar. He did Dunkirk. He did Ad Astra. He did the recent movie Tenet. So he is no small time cinematographer. He's doing these huge blockbusters, and his style is unparalleled. He's like Roger Deakins. It is just absolutely jaw dropping, as well as Chivo. Just the things that these guys can do is, I don't know, speechless. It makes me speechless. Like, it is inspiring to see their work. And A bonus cinematographer. I could talk about this all day, guys. Sorry. Robert Richardson. That is Quentin Tarantino's cinematographer. The dude is super, super talented. And he inspires me a lot as well.
Same. And I'm not even a cinematographer. I mean, I dabble like in camera stuff, but any Tarantino movie, like love him or hate him, every filmmaker in some way, there's some Tarantino film, or at least a sequence from a Tarantino film where they're like, God damn.
God
or actually, to put that into Pulp Fiction terms, I said, God damn. But all right, hit me with something. Hit me with a question.
Hit you with a question. Yeah. So my first question, Justin, for you is, so as a director, a lot of times you have to go and you have to take somebody's story. If you're not a writer director, in this case, now you're just doubling down on your skill set as a director. You have to take somebody else's thoughts in their head, a writer's thoughts, and you have to actually deliver those. So where do you draw inspiration as a director from, and how do you develop that skill?
For me, it's really, so I'm an observant person. I draw a lot of inspiration from real life people and situations, and some of you listeners might think, well, that's boring, but you don't realize how many filmmakers do that, how many writers do that, how many directors do that. Aaron Sorkin will sit there and tell you all day when he's writing, and he's one of my favorite screenwriters of all time. The dude can write the hell out of some dialogue. All of the dialogue that he writes, as intellectual as you might think it sounds, or as much of it as there is, if you watch his interviews, he tells you that half of the dialogue that he puts into his screenplays is from conversations that he's overheard of people, or from people that he observes in real life. So, they always say, art imitates life, life imitates art. So for me, for example, with Incisor, so you wrote that script. So yes, you and I talked a little bit about how, those characters are in your head, how you envision these characters and their personalities. But as a director, and I feel like any director needs to do this, you in some way need to project onto these characters people that you've interacted with in real life, whether you've taken notes while observing people, which is kind of creepy in my opinion, but that's what Aaron Sorkin says he does as a writer. He said he sits in the park and will listen to people, he literally just eavesdrops and writes it down in a notebook and goes home and writes. Yes. But
he has black
I don't
hair.
do that. Yeah, I don't do that. I just keep a mental note, whether it's a one-liner that, from then I can kind of maybe for the rest of the week, try to figure out what kind of person that was based on what they say. And that's kind of the exercise I would tell you is observe people. Don't stalk them around public, but if you overhear a conversation as you're walking by, kind of in your head, try to figure out a character, so this line that this person said, what kind of character is that? What kind of person is that? And develop a backstory and a personality for that person. So that's just kind of something I've always done.
No, what you said makes complete sense, because as somebody that writes a lot of scripts, I do that. I do it all day at work, because I interact with a lot of people. I have to have a lot of conversations with people. And, I'm always thinking about character development, hey, I could write this kind of personality in my screenplay, and as a kid, as a teenager, one of my favorite things to do, I used to have this friend, his name also was Andrew. It was weird. I had 3 friends named Andrew other than myself at one time. So quick story. So me and my buddy, Andrew Brown, we would go and we'd hit the mall, right? And we'd go and we'd get us some Sbarros. I'd get the calzone. He'd get whatever the hell he got. And we'd sit in the food court. And the way the mall was laid out was the food court was in the center, and it was just like a big oval shape. So everybody would just make laps. That's what everybody did. They would come to the mall and they would just make laps. So me and him, we would just post up. And we would people watch, and that was our favorite thing to do for some reason. Super creepy, kind of stalkerish, but I mean, we weren't like watching one certain person. We would just actually just like, as my son would say, we were just vibing. We were just vibing.
Just vibing. Well, I mean, though, but as filmmakers, you have to people watch, because how are you going to write? So I'm a 29-year-old male. How am I going to write a script or direct a script that has, say, a 60-year-old woman if I've never observed or paid attention to a 60-year-old woman, whether in passing at the grocery store or at the doctor's office? Like, you can't, I mean, you can write characters, but if you don't have any experience like observing these people in real life, it's going to seem ingenuine and come off as just terrible.
Yeah, just come off as bullshit. And that's the sort of thing, it's like we have a female lead, right? Like our script for Incisor is female driven, and writing that part, I kind of drew inspiration from friends that I had that were female, from my wife, from just conversations I've heard, and it is kind of hard to write characters like that. It would be helpful if my John Carpenter had a Deborah Hill to write these female parts, but
well, too, with that, like, as far from a director standpoint, especially like working with Jackie, for example, in situations like that, especially on this level, like, independent filmmaking, if you're working with, you and I both being, dudes who were like in their 30s, I told Jackie on certain lines, it's like, okay, I know the script says this is the general idea, this is the general mood you need to sell, but if you need to change the wording or whatever to make it more natural to how you as a woman would say it, you have full creative freedom to do that. And it's just finding that balance as far as that kind of thing goes.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's pretty much it, real life, being a stalker.
You got any more questions for me?
I do. So, what moment from any film sticks with you to this day and influences your camera work, even if it's just a little bit? Doesn't have to shape your entire style, but anything that creeps into your influence. One specific, and this is just one. I'm gonna make it tough.
Oh my God.
One moment from one film that has always stuck with you. I know you want my example?
You can tell me your example.
Well, just to, just take the pressure off of you, unless I'm about to steal yours. Like, that'd be some shit. Like, even just from a directing standpoint, the opening to Goodfellas will forever just be like, oh shit, that's like a fucking 7-minute one shot.
Yeah,
and everything
you fucking stole it. The Copacabana Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Goodfellas shot. And
okay, well, you talk about why that to you.
Okay, so here is why. This shot, if you don't know, go right now to YouTube, unless you're driving. Then as soon as you can, go and look up, if you're not familiar with the shot, it is Goodfellas Copacabana nightclub. And you can look at the scene.
Tell your wife to hold the steering wheel.
Yeah, tell your wife to hold the steering wheel. Yeah, but if you look at it, it's basically a Steadicam shot. It's a one shot, and it goes from outside of this nightclub, and it follows our two main characters, Ray Liotta, and I don't remember the actress's name. Her name is Karen in the movie, and it follows them all the way through the back door of this nightclub, all the way through the kitchen, because he's showing that, hey, I'm this guy, I know people. So he actually has like an exclusive entryway into the restaurant where he doesn't have to come through the front. He enters through the kitchen. The camera follows him, and then he gets a table brought out for him, and all while the Steadicam's following him. So this in this time was unheard of, having these one shots like this, because in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, the Steadicam was still kind of a new piece of technology. So when people
really
did
the only
shit
thing
like
you
this,
had like that was probably like the opening to Halloween in 78.
Yeah, I mean, you had,
and it wasn't on that large of a scale though. It was still not nowhere near on the scale that Goodfellas is on.
The reason this shot is so sick is because when you think about it, you got to think about how the timing and not just the timing, but how the cameraman and everybody has to hit their marks at the same time just to make it look as natural as it does. And for some reason, like when I started getting into cinematography, Goodfellas has always been my favorite movie ever since I was young. I'm talking about probably 14 or 15 years old. When I first started being like, oh shit, this is what cinematography is, and I started analyzing this movie because it was my favorite. This scene is one of those that was always like, holy crap, how did they do that? Like, how do these people know where to go at the right time? So this scene has always been it for me. It's so funny you had the same one.
Yep. Well, mine is just the way that film or that specific scene, everything is just so like everything is orchestrated so perfectly, like the blocking. So it's not just a cinematography thing. That was the DP and the director working like so well together. And the director wanting, this, everything was blocked perfectly. The transitions into the different rooms and parts of the restaurant were perfect. And then, of course, the DP like is in charge of pulling all of this off. So it's just like a fucking phenomenal shot all the way around.
Right. So, I mean, well, that's Scorsese. You don't work for Scorsese if you're not going to deliver perfection. I mean, that's literally, right. He's one of the old school masters, like a Kubrick or a Hitchcock or, like somebody like that, where you don't not perform, right? Like you have to perform at that level. And Michael Ballhaus was his cinematographer. He actually did Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Mm-hmm. And you remember how sick that looked. He also did The Departed in 2006, The Age of Innocence. He did a lot of major movies. And but Goodfellas, hands down, that is like, I just want to go watch it now. Like every time it's on TV, that is the movie that when it comes on, I don't care what I'm doing, I drop everything and watch it. It's sort of like Halloween, 1978. Yeah. Like you just watch it. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's my answer. And let me move to a question for you real quick. Mine are kind of long-winded. What is the hardest part about directing, in your opinion, Justin?
For me,
for you,
and this goes for anything, like even just like my YouTube content, over analyzing. Like that's just always my biggest hurdle in any kind of creative. Like even back when I was just in bands, like over analyzing lyrics or the arrangement of a song, or
where do you think that comes from? The strive for perfection, or do you think it comes from
like the strive? It's a combination of the strive for perfection, and then also I'm just an anxious motherfucker. So it's that like even if I think it's good, I'm like, well, what if it gets criticized? And it's not that I care too much, but this is something that we're striving for a career in. So if no one likes the films that I make, well, I don't have a career. So
true that.
It's just an overanalyzation because it's never ever as bad as I think that it is. It's never as the reaction of people is never as harsh or bad as I think it's going to be. It always turns out okay. Everything's okay. It's just that initial like step I overanalyze, which is something I'm getting better at. I'm trying to stop doing that, but I'd say for me that's the hardest part about directing.
Well, isn't it funny, Justin, that you remember being in bands? And like I said, guys, I played in a million bands, the same as Justin growing up, and I've always told everybody that there is no better feeling than being on stage. It doesn't matter if you're playing for 4 people, 400 or 4,000. I felt the same every time, right? And it was just the pure adrenaline and the butterflies in your stomach. The only other way that I've ever felt that in my life is when I'm shooting a film. And it's hard to explain because it's not like shooting a live film in front of 400 people, but I get that same adrenaline, that same like just nervousness, but also excitement in my stomach. And it's just, like you said, it's like a Molotov cocktail of anxiety and pure happiness and, wanting to hide.
For me, it doesn't work necessarily that way. It's more of I love making films and directing films, but the entire time that I'm doing it, I'm like, there's like that small bit of like nervousness. But then once everything's wrapped, like at the end of the day, you know, when I call that's a wrap, it's like, that was so like, you know, that was
that
good
feeling.
Damn day. Yeah. And then it's like, of course, after like watching, whether it's dailies or watching a finished production, I'm like, hell yeah. But
yeah,
it's what I love. It's what I love.
Hardest part for you is overanalyzing yourself and overanalyzing what you're doing.
Yep.
I can get down with that. I understand that. How do you work past that?
Basically just telling my head to shut the fuck up and just going with it. I've got enough people that I'm comfortable enough working with, especially you being my cinematographer. I feel like if I start to like overthink things a little bit, you know, I've got enough people around me that, you know, I respect their opinions enough to be like, okay, well, hey, you know, how are we doing here? Like, is this good? Do we need to change this? And then, you know, we work it out. So
that's a good answer.
I have a good support system.
I mean, I would have been kind of worried if you would have been like spray paint. I have spray paint on set.
Yeah. I just, I go and sit in the bathroom and cry. I have a good cry. And then I come back and it's ready to go. All right. So I've got a couple more questions for you. So as a cinematographer, what are the biggest differences in your approach shooting anything else that you've ever filmed as opposed to horror?
That's a good one. So anytime I've shot a film, I always try and shoot something a little darker, because that's where my heart and my passion lies is in the, you know, like the darker elements and the darker, personalities in humans. Right. So, you know, I shot like a crime drama called Lines, and that was kind of dark. Right. So I kind of infused a little bit of horror elements into that. But, you know, I've also shot a lot of weddings.
That had a straight up horror soundtrack. You were responsible for that soundtrack too.
I scored that myself. But, you know, like
hey, John Carpenter, calm down.
I've shot a lot of stuff, you know, weddings and like I said, commercials and stuff like that. And the way you prepare for those is completely different than horror. Like, I mean, you draw inspiration from different places, and I'm big on packing my brain full of inspiration. So like, let's say I'm going to shoot a wedding, then I will go and I will look at wedding photos. I'll go and I'll look at wedding films online. But since, you know, I don't shoot any of that anymore, unless, you know, I'm doing a favor for somebody here or there. But the way I approach horror is the same way, you know, like as a cinematographer, you know, I do a lot of looking at photography online, looking at a lot of certain movies. So like for Incisor, you know, I had a certain look in my head that I wanted. So I went and I watched a lot of movies that coincided with that look, as well as, you know, the way I wanted the characters to look. I broke down and made a lookbook for the cast and crew. I went and I looked at photography that dealt with that. So, you know, to give you a little glimpse, like let's say, you know, I was wanting something set in the 1950s. I would go and I would look at movies set in the 1950s, or I would go and I would look at photos from the 1950s, right? To just help me figure out not only my camera choice, my lens choices, any kind of LUTs that I need to, you know, potentially create to use to monitor with on set, or just, you know, to give me the right kind of camera movements, because I'm a full believer in motivated camera movements. Like keep it on sticks, keep it there unless you have a reason to move the camera, because if you're just moving the camera all willy-nilly, it's gonna deliver a different emotion, right? Whether I am dollying in and out or my camera is just stationary, right? Or if I'm craning down on an actress as opposed to doing a drone shot, or, you know. And where I'm going with this is I believe that if you look at the way certain periods of time are, whether it's something like, let's say, Vietnam versus Evil Dead, right? I would shoot those two kind of movies different. Well, actually, I'd probably shoot those two the same. Honestly,
I was gonna say,
honestly.
a
So
war
let me
film about
say,
Vietnam, filmed in the style of Evil Dead.
right.
Be
So
pretty
yeah,
sick.
that sounds pretty sick, right?
Coming soon, 2025.
Right. So let me take that back. Let's say Evil Dead versus if I'm gonna do like a live action Disney movie like Cinderella, right? You're gonna shoot them completely different, you know. Same with horror, you know, like you're not gonna shoot Alfred Hitchcock The Birds the same as you would shoot, you know, Let the Right One In. You know, it's gonna be completely different. So when I prepare for a movie, I'm looking at the period that the movie's going to be filmed in. I'm looking at what the color palette should be, what lenses I should use to make it period correct if I feel like going that route. And I also look at any kind of LUTs or anything, you know, like that I want to do, whether it be horror or otherwise. I kind of approach it all the same. I just draw inspiration from, if it's horror, looking at my horror inspirations versus, you know, others.
Makes sense.
All right, Justin. So we're rounding out these questions here. We've got just a few left. So hopefully you guys are hanging in there and you're learning a little bit. If nothing else, you're learning to get to know us a little bit, more of our personalities and whatnot. So Justin.
Yep.
What is your favorite director and why?
Ooh. So, my all-time favorite, if any of you have listened to this podcast, you know this. It's John Carpenter. But, God, there are so many. So, you're only going to let me choose one? Or can I just pop off? Because I've got like...
You can give me your number one favorite and why. And then you can give me 2 honorable mentions.
Ooh, okay, 2. So, John Carpenter, all-time favorite, because... the original Halloween, 1978, no matter how cliche anyone might think it is, that's my all-time favorite film because, so as I mentioned before, you know, I was into Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps and then Tales from the Crypt. But whenever I started going to, I was probably in like 4th grade or something like that. And my mom took us to the video store and they would have like the 99-cent Tuesdays or whatever. And it was like a 2-3 day rental for like 99 cents. And I started like seeing all these horror films and I was like, ooh, what's this? And I picked up Halloween and took it home. And I just remember as a kid being so like, I was like, whoa, for one, that scared the ever living shit out of me because I did not want to even look out my window because, you know, the scene where Tommy Doyle sees him across the street for the first time when he's carrying Annie's body back into the house. Like, I was just so afraid I was going to look across the street at the neighbors and the street light. I was going to see like the silhouette of like the boogeyman. But just the way that film played out. And at that time, I didn't know what a director was. So I'm not saying like in, you know, 4th grade, I was like, oh, John Carpenter, you know, I'm not worthy. But then as I got older and got more into film and I learned more of what a director is, and then I also started dabbling in, you know, writing my own stuff, I started watching more John Carpenter films. The Fog, another one of my favorite horror films. And then, you know, getting into his other films that aren't horror, like, you know, Escape from LA, Escape from New York, those films.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China. So John Carpenter is the man that made me want to be a director. I want to be, I don't know, like I want to be sedated. Yeah. I don't want to say I want to be John Carpenter because if you ever watched a John Carpenter interview, that dude is done with everybody's shit.
He is cynical.
Yeah. He's done.
He's quite cynical.
He is just done. Like, I would be afraid to, if I was an interviewer and I had ever seen a John Carpenter interview and someone was like, hey, you want to interview John Carpenter? I'd be like, nope.
Yeah, John Carpenter's like, leave me alone with my sense. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, but yeah, John Carpenter. Love me some John Carpenter. So, 2 honorable mentions. Only 2?
Yeah, come on, man. Come on, man.
All right. I'm going to go, this is, as far as this being a horror podcast, it's going to seem completely weird. But Wes Anderson.
Love Wes Anderson.
Love Wes Anderson. Just love his visuals and just, yeah. So, Next one. Ooh, that's tough. I'm gonna have to go with David Fincher, man.
Fincher's fantastic.
Yeah,
Fincher's fantastic.
there's a couple more names I could throw out, but I'm gonna say those are my top three. Tarantino is like probably like he's starting to like peek his head in there, but it's also like everybody would say Tarantino. So.
Yeah, I'm a big Tarantino fan. Big Tarantino fan. Let me analyze you real quick. John Carpenter is 100% to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where you draw inspiration from. And you also said Wes Anderson, which I fucking love Wes Anderson. And I think Wes Anderson, if he was to ever make a horror movie, it would be phenomenal.
It would look like Midsommar.
It would look like a Stanley Kubrick movie because Stanley Kubrick center framed everything too.
Yeah.
But Fincher, I can see that playing a little bit on your more intelligent side, because I think Fincher is a very calculated director, right?
Yep.
I feel like he is somebody that makes very intentional choices, not just artistic choices. I feel like if you were to ask a director like, hey, where is the best place for me to put this actor where it's going to draw the audience's eye, almost immediately Fincher would be like, there. Wes Anderson's like, just center frame it, and John Carpenter's like, just put him behind a hedge peeking out. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So it is so crazy when you analyze directors, and I think those three are two opposite extremes, and then one center framed in the middle. So makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, those are my top three, man. I like what I like. I'm inspired by what I'm inspired by. So,
yeah.
Let's see here. I think I only have one more for you. Yeah. So you wrote Incisor. Both of us.
I did.
You know, like I've mostly written my own things. You've mostly written your own things. Now I did, dabble in film school, kind of, sort of. And I've had, to write screenplays in classes that were then directed by other peers in my screenplay writing class. So I kind of already, know what it's like to write something and someone else direct it. But I'm pretty sure this is the first time you've written something that someone else has had like sole directing duties, right?
It is.
So that, as what was it like having someone else direct one of your screenplays? And how did it feel with that, giving you the ability to focus solely on cinematography?
So I am a control freak. It is hard for me to give up creative control. And it goes back into a little bit of what Justin was talking about with himself. I am a perfectionist through and through when it comes to a lot of things in my life. And it comes from a place of not just overanalyzing, but it comes from a place of, I don't know where it comes from. I wish I did, because then maybe I could fix it. But, I'm a control freak, like I said, and it was very hard for me to give up creative control to Justin. But knowing him and knowing how similar our visions are, I feel like I can fully trust him. And as well as if I know that I think he's making a bad directing choice, I know that he would be receptive to that, and vice versa. If I'm making a bad move as a DP and he was to tell me, I would be receptive to him because I know where his knowledge base lies, and it's not just empty criticism. So I think that it's a catch-22, because I'm not going to lie and say that I see my script exactly the same way Justin does, because I don't. I already have my movie played out in my head. 100%, and I already have the shots played out in my head because I have directed stuff in the past and I do know how to DP, so I know that how I would do it. But how I would do it is not necessarily the best way that it should be done, and I've realized through other projects that I've had some projects come up short because I tried to do everything, and I'm not the alpha, the end all be all, like giving up creative control is a positive thing, and being able to collaborate is a positive thing. And being able to listen to everybody's ideas, no matter if you think that they have the chops or not. Like I said, I fully listen to Justin because Justin has a lot of similarities, and I feel like he has the knowledge to make those decisions. But I would also listen to the AC, right? Or to the grip or to the boom operator, because, those people could have this hidden talent that I don't know about, right? And I'm always willing to try, and that is something I really pushed myself on in Sizer. But on the flip side of that, you have to also know when to tell people, nah, I don't think we have time to try that, or no, that doesn't really seem like the direction that we're going, right? I mean, that as a director because you have people doing that all day long, but as a cinematographer, people try the same thing, and they're like, what if we just bring the drone in here and fly the drone through? Or what if we just, put the camera over there on some books because it takes too long to bring the dolly and set it up, or something like that, and you're like,
yep,
no, that's not going to work. And here's why that's not going to work, right? Or, hey, let's get the gimbal out. Let's do a following shot because that'll look cool. But it's like, that doesn't serve the story.
Right.
What was the question? What was the fucking question again? What was it like having someone direct your screenplay?
Yeah.
It's nice, right? It is nice. On the flip side of everything, it is nice having somebody else take the directing reins, because there's people that can do it. People like Robert Rodriguez that directs. He operates his own camera. He edits his own films, but that guy is an anomaly. To be able to do all of that and be able to mentally process all of those at the scale, and at the level that he does, he's a freak of nature, right? Like I can't yet do both of those and do them both to their full ability that I should be able to. And it's nice having somebody there that can, right? I like not having that added responsibility.
Right. And I could say the same vice versa, being someone who all of my student films, not only did I write, I had to direct, and then I also had to DP them. So yeah, it's nice to be able to focus all of my creative energy and my mental energy having to deal with certain things on this one job, as opposed to a million.
You get spread so thin that you end up half-assing
certain
something.
areas begin to suffer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it makes you even more frustrated knowing when you can see that that's going on. And I've had that, and I don't want to have that moving forward. So if it's something that I'm not just shooting a short skit for or something like that, I don't ever plan on directing and DPing. I would DP and I would edit, or I would direct and edit, or I would direct and write, but I would never DP and direct. Not anytime in the near future.
Right.
It ain't worth it, kids.
Nope.
Find you a solid cinematographer or find you a solid director. Make those connections and make sure that you work well with them.
Yep.
All right, so I've got two more questions that I want you to touch on real quick. First question is, Justin, what is one tool or item you have to have with you on every set? Is there something that you take with you, whether it's a lucky charm, or is it a tool, like a multi-tool or something you keep with you at all times?
Nothing that's like in that sense, but I do. So one thing that I like to use, we did this on Incisor. Most people, most directors, they carry around their fancy little director's viewfinder. I don't have one of those because I'm not going to pay what the cheapest one you can find is probably like $150. I'm not going to pay for that when I already have a mirrorless camera that I use for other things anyway, when I can literally just throw that in wherever we are and, frame up my shot while you're setting up other things. That way I don't have to bother you and be like, hey, set up this whole cinema rig and let me look through let me look at your monitor. So
right.
I like having my own camera on set. That way, while you're like rigging things out, because that takes some time. Sometimes
it does take some time.
So that allows you to be rigging things out, and I can be going and just throwing, my little Sony A7 III on some sticks. Those are tripods for, those of you who don't know the film set lingo. But that way I can like kind of vibe out, how I want to block things and frame things without having to always be looking over your shoulder. So
yeah, and I think as a director, I think that's extremely important, even as a DP, right? Like, to have something more portable to carry around. So, yeah, you can just kind of fill the shot out, especially if you have a zoom lens. That's really the only time it's going to come in handy. You need a zoom lens that's going to cover basically whatever your focal lengths you're going to use on the film.
Right.
So like if you're going to go from a 24 to an 85, get you a 24 to 105 like Justin's got, and then you just go and you frame up the shot, and then when he gets over there to me, he can be like, hey, yo, we need a 44-2 Helios 44-2 Russian lens up on this thing. And I'll be like, okay, but you do know that's an 88 on my camera. And he'd be like, yeah, that's why I set my camera to 88 millimeters, because it's 24 to 105. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep. And then that eliminates all of that headache right there. So, and some of you might be thinking, okay, you were saying that you're not going to spend $150 on a viewfinder, but yet you're talking about using like a $3,500 camera setup. You can use your smartphone. There are apps. Yeah. There are viewfinding apps where you can set you can even choose like your camera type. Most modern cameras, like all the way from like Canon 5Ds to Lumix GH5s and all the way to the Sony A7 IIIs and A6400s. You can set what camera you're using, what lens you want to use. It's even got like, the Arri Alexas and all those. And you don't have to, like, you already have a phone in your pocket. There's no excuse. You've got tools at your disposal.
That's even cheaper. They used to do it in the olden days. So if you're watching this on YouTube, if not, you take your hands and your fingers and you put them in a square and you look through them.
How many times did I do that as a joke?
This number here
on set. Yeah. The good old field goals. Yeah.
Yeah. So last question, Justin, I got for you is, it kind of plays off of everything we've talked about. And this is going to help out a lot of people, because I know that other than cinematography, a lot of people are aspiring directors, right? So like every other discipline, you have to practice your craft in order to get good at it, because you can't just show up on, the day of the shoot, especially when somebody's like, hey, bro, I got $3 million for you. I need you to come and I need you to shoot me a blockbuster. James Cameron ain't just, no, James Cameron ain't doing it. Michael Bay might just show up and wing it. James Cameron ain't, but
all Michael Bay's going to do is blow up half a city block and like,
we need more lens flares, God damn it.
That's J.J. Abrams right there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They're all the same guy to me. They're all the same.
They're not John Carpenter.
No hate. They're all the same dude to me. But anyways, so how do you practice your skill when you're not on set as a director? Is there any kind of like technical things you do? Because I know you talked earlier about people watching a little bit, but
not really.
Less about that and more about like the technical aspect of it, blocking actors.
Right. One thing I would say to do, as far as progression of a story, I try to apply that to anything I do, especially like my YouTube content. If you don't know, we both have YouTube channels. We kind of like through vlogs document like our filmmaking journey, but so even something as simple as like when I'm vlogging, I try to say, okay, well, how can I make this transition? Or does this have a cohesive story? And then as far as applying it more to actual filmmaking, whether you've got a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, or even like we mentioned, it's 2020. Everyone's got a smartphone in their pocket. Well, most people, and they've got pretty decent cameras. So if you have to literally sit in your studio, your office, whatever it is, write some kind of short film, whether it's 3 minutes long, 10 minutes long, whatever, and film it by yourself. Practice, where the camera should sit, how you should stand in that shot, based on, the script, like how many people are you, is it just you by yourself, or is it like your spouse or a friend or a sibling, is someone going to help you with it? So now you've got 2 characters. This teaches you how to work with what you have as far as location, equipment, lighting, your characters, and is basically just doing it. If you look up any video on YouTube, whether it's like Film Riot, Rocket Jump Film School, all those old school people that, we as independent filmmakers used to watch on YouTube, they'll tell you, if you want to be a filmmaker, just go do it. And I think most people, when they hear that at face value, they think, well, if it was that easy, like, don't you think like I wouldn't be watching your damn video? But when people tell you that, they literally mean like exactly what I'm saying. Like, this little short film you make to practice directing and blocking and stuff like that, you don't have to show anybody. Like, it's just a project. I used to, whenever I was trying to be better at editing, I used to just go find stock footage all the time and piece together like little edits. No one will ever see these things, but it was just practice. And so that's what I would suggest doing, is taking your phone, getting a couple friends together, and practicing.
It's perfect advice.
Making films.
It translates. If it's easier for you to understand, it translates exactly over to sports. Like Michael Jordan, it's not like he didn't ever practice shooting in his backyard before he got to the NBA.
Right.
It's the same thing, right? You're going to shoot 1,000 free throw shots to make sure that you're not going to miss a free throw shot later on in the big game. It's the same thing. Shoot a short film. How interesting can I make me going to the fridge and getting a snack look? Boom.
Yep.
Simple techniques like that, building blocks.
That's all it is.
Well, Justin, that's about all the questions I got for you. So
yeah, I think this is a pretty informative episode, and now you guys maybe will, leave here with a little bit more insight on us as filmmakers and creators. So I'm excited to get back to making some films.
I need some more lens flares, goddammit.
More lens flares, goddammit. That's the name of this episode.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're going to wrap that up. Thank you guys for checking this episode out. I know this was a little different, but maybe now you guys have more insight, into us as filmmakers. And I'm excited to get back to making some films, and excited for you guys to see these films. So if you want to keep up with us, you can find the podcast on Twitter at Cinema Creek Pod and on Instagram at Cinema Creek Podcast. We are on YouTube, Black Mass Films. Black Mass Films is also on Twitter and Instagram. And you can listen on Spotify, which you're listening in one of the 2 places, YouTube or Spotify right now. So, and if you want to follow me personally on Twitter, it is Horror Dad 13, and Instagram, I am Dawn of the Living Dad. Andrew, where can they find you?
I am on every social media platform. YouTube and Instagram are the best ones. Hit me up at Drucifer. That is DREWXCIFER.
Yeah. So, that's it. Stay creepy, and we will catch you guys next week for some werewolf goodness.
See ya.
Is that what we're doing?
What?
Yeah, we're doing werewolf goodness next week. See ya.
Yep.